663 is trouble too. It's $1,000. You are on your own as a private individual when there are ethics violations. The town will not defend.
We're all set?
That's good.
Notice is okay.
Right, because it's, you know, right,
Right.
why should we?
All set, John?
Exactly. Right. Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the November 14th Falmouth Planning Board meeting to order. The first item on our agenda tonight is minutes from October 14th and October 17th and October 24th.
Mr. Chairman, the minutes of October 14th, October 17th, October 24th were corrected, and I recommend approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. The next item on our agenda is public comment. If anyone's here tonight that wants to discuss something that's not on our agenda, this is an opportunity for you to come up and address the planning board. Very good. Approval not required plans. I didn't see any, Brian. Is there any in the package?
There are none.
Moving right along. The next item on the agenda, applicant Bogosian Development LLC. Site plan to review and construct a mixed-use building at 661 Main Street, Cape and Islands Engineering. And I've had to ask advice of the town council, and he says that I should recuse myself from this meeting because I sold the property to the applicant. So, in my stead, Paul will be chairing the meeting, and I'll be back for the next one. I'll be watching on TV.
The notice of public meeting notice was published on October 6, 2017, and 14 abutters were notified by regular mail. The applicant Bogosian Development site plan review to construct mixed-use building at 661 Main Street. Members of the planning board have comments? We'll hear from the applicant first.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmed Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent Bogosian Development LLC, the prospective buyer of the property at 661 Main Street. This property is located on Main Street, ironically enough, on a lot of approximately 40,941 square feet. It's located entirely in the business redevelopment zone district. Currently, this lot contains a commercial use building of approximately 9,000 square feet, which has a variety of uses. And currently, there's a large unit at the end, which has been leased to Aquatic Brewing, which is in the process of doing their permitting, and that's entirely on the east end of the property. Then there's a secondhand thrift shop, a Falmouth Track Club, and there is currently a vacant space in there as well. The applicant is proposing to redo the facade of the building to add a second floor entirely within the existing footprint. This would create 7 residential units above the existing commercial space. Presently, or in the process, there are 26 spaces on the lot. There are 8 spots which are being striped over, which will be striped over here, have not been striped yet. In addition, there are another 18 spots located on the lot. The proposed units would require an additional 10 parking spaces. There's 4 one-bedroom units and 3 two-bedroom units. Total of 36 spots, or 10 spots above the 26 that exist today. Section 240-240J allows the planning board to reduce the required minimum parking for mixed-use development. This is when the uses are complementary in days and hours of operation. The existing uses on the site are all daytime peak usages. The proposed, being residential, would be primarily nights and evenings. That reduction from the 36 that would be required to the 26 that exist today, or to exist today, would be a reduction of 28%. This project also requires a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have applied for that permit and will be heard by the ZBA on December 14th, I believe. We are here tonight for site plan review because in addition to the parking, This project adds over 1,000 square feet. Site plan review is designed to ensure the design and the layout is suitable development and will not result in detriment to the neighborhood. The proposed development is ideal for business redevelopment. It's a mixed-use building with both commercial and residential uses. It would serve as an extension of Main Street and is in line with the town's long-term plans. I, along with Mr. Costa from Cape Islands Engineering and Mr. Bogosian, would be happy to address any questions you might have at this time.
Bill, please.
Thank you. Any stuff? Do you have any comments?
My comments would come from the planning board review, the things that don't appear to have been addressed, and I wonder if they could be. There's no van accessible space appears.
Sorry, can you?
Oh, it's not required?
Use the microphone. You can't hear it.
There's a question about the adequacy of the parking spaces. Would you review that again, please?
There are 26 spaces that exist today. The proposed residential uses would require an additional 10 parking spaces beyond that. We're asking the planning board to reduce the required amount of parking to allow the 26 spaces to remain. We are currently looking for off-site parking as well. Business redevelopment allows for additional parking spaces to be used within 300 feet of the lot. We haven't been able to secure any from a long-term perspective yet. Those are being sought, but we feel that the proposed parking is allowable under the planning board guidelines, under the zoning bylaws.
And a loading zone?
There, most of these uses wouldn't require a loading zone. This is primarily retail and retail usage, including the brewery. I don't think they're bringing in a loading. They're not bringing in materials at a rate that would require a large-scale loading dock.
And where is the handicapped accessible space compared to the doors for the,
There is a handicap space located here.
and the doors to the residential units are where?
There'll be one located here, and there will also be, I believe, one located at the rear.
For the record, I'm Mark Bogosian with Bogosian Development, Longfellow Design Development. There's going to be numerous doors to get up to the upstairs, so that'll also help with the egress for the different apartments. So if somebody was coming with a handicap, they could have access to certain sides of the building would be very close to the spot.
Paul. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, perhaps the development team can show the board any architectural elevations you may have to give them a perspective.
Sure.
It's kind of blends with your plan review. Thank you. You know how to operate that thing? Got a permit for that? That might be
First time,
you.
right?
Corey can help you.
Is it on the desktop there?
Let me give Corey, give you a hand here.
Okay, is it all in the same order?
There you go.
So this is,
So you can see in the rendering, there's going to be doors next to, as you see right over here, there'll be a set of doors as well as on the side, and then additional doors in the rear.
Mhm.
and that gives another perspective.
But there's no elevator. Is there an elevator?
No, there's no elevator planned at this time.
Bob? Oh, Pam?
So there are no handicap accessible units, apartments?
No, with not being an elevator, although I wouldn't, that's something that, a residential elevator is something we put in on several projects. We could try to arrange with one of the sides of the building, have 2 or 3 of the units have access to.
Any affordable units?
Right now, I'm going to say not by all the rentals that I have in the area on Main Street. The rents that I'm charging coincide with what is very similar to the affordable rates but they've been affordable based off design of the people that I've worked out, trying to get in my buildings, but not set guidelines.
I don't think there's no current proposal to restrict them for affordability. As you know, restricting affordability brings oversight and compliance issues that add an awful lot of expense and difficulty to a relatively small scale project.
No, just wondering. And the other, so the handicap space, I thought there were 2 spaces.
So as the parking is currently laid out in this area here and this area here, there are no handicap spaces. We'd be adding a handicap space in this area over here.
So out of the 26 parking places, only 1 is handicap accessible?
As currently constituted, yes.
We'd be happy to add another one to the front.
I mean, it just seems like 1 is not terribly adequate for commercial space or for,
Yeah, I think that there might be some opportunity to add another one, and if we went on the opposite side and put something on this over here, so there's extra room in addition next to it. So we'd be very much open to adding that.
as long as there's a door that's close by the handicap
Yeah, well,
accessible.
this is what I would want to try to cover, and if we get to if we have one that was over parking in this area, is where I just laid it out a moment ago, that would also meet this door for upstairs, and then also all these businesses on this side. So if you were going to the brewery, you'd have one on that side. If you were going to one of these, it would be within a short distance.
I'm looking at where the dumpster is located. How is that accessed? Is it accessed through, coming in from Main Street, through your parking lot, and then going kind of around onto the other parcel? Because it looks like it's located on the other parcel.
Are you referring to this
Oh,
dumpster here?
Paul?
Oh, okay, I didn't see that. I was looking at the other one up top.
Which one are you looking at?
I
This
was
one
looking
here?
at the one at top. I didn't see the one at the bottom.
This one here is, I believe, services the
Yeah,
restaurant.
that's what I was wondering. I didn't see that lower one. So that's just a dumpster out in the open there, then, on the lawn right now.
Another option for the dumpster is to look at trying to take advantage of this area in the rear of the building.
Oh, I don't have any problem with the location
Okay.
in the back there. I just,
Yeah, because the dumpster right now is in the back.
Yeah.
This currently right here is,
yeah,
So we could screen that.
yeah, yeah. I don't have a problem with the location
Mhm.
there. Just a matter of getting access to it.
Just straight in.
Yeah.
John?
So in regards to the brewery, for deliveries, do you just have a single door there for the product to come in and go out? Is there going to be
they
an
have there's-
overhead door?
There is an overhead door there currently, as well as a,
I'm actually helping them with some of the design for the brewery. There right now, that overhead door is actually going to be into more where it's going to be more for opening and seeing. They're going to have really traditional doors similar to what is in our design. It's going to be, it'll be very similar to this style here. Now, we don't have it. So the style of the doors will be similar to what you have in the commercial spaces.
Style of the doors for customers to go into or for product to be delivered?
Both. When people come in and out, it's going to be off that side. We don't anticipate, neither they don't anticipate the amount of deliveries being excessive.
Excessive meaning a tractor trailer?
Correct.
So it'd be like a box truck or?
Yeah, similar to what we find going into, other comparable businesses like if they were delivering to the crepe store up front or on the smaller scale, not big time. They don't get large enough
More in line
deliveries
with
to
restaurant
warrant,
delivery.
And do you have an idea on a time for deliveries? Would it be before business hours? My only concern is if you get a vehicle in there, how are they going to turn around and come back out?
Yeah.
We haven't discussed the hours of delivery with the brewery, and I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, but most businesses, I think, try to aim to have their deliveries done earlier in the morning, because I think that's when most deliveries are available, and trying to get their jobs done and off the road to avoid peak traffic. So I think we'd be looking at, early to late morning, so, somewhere in the 8 to 10 o'clock range in the morning, but I wouldn't want to make any conditions to the future.
I don't have a concern on the delivery times. My concern is to make sure that you have enough room for whatever vehicle makes the delivery can get in and get out. I'm sure when you go to the ZBA, you're going to have these same questions, but that's really not in our purview. But getting a vehicle in and getting a vehicle out is.
Based off the size of the vehicles and everything, we talked to them about what they'll be doing from a delivery standpoint. Everything was much smaller scale. Their concept is much more of it's not a high production brewery, that's selling to outside. They're not trying to provide to other liquor stores. They're having it just so clients, people who come in and taste it and try it and then purchase it.
It's a retail sales operation.
So they're
Okay.
not, they're not producing beer to then put in trucks and deliver elsewhere and having a constant flow of that. It's really producing on a small enough scale that the people that are coming are buying what they can kind of carry out.
Okay.
And that was a discussion with Mr. Curry and Mr. Palmer when we looked into the permitting of the brewery. That was done in a way that it is intended as retail sales, and there is no wholesale operation taking place at the site. So it is smaller scale.
Okay, great. Thank you. No other questions for me.
I think the design is a real improvement over what's there. It's really going to look a whole lot better. It will pick up the back end there of that commercial area. It will be nice. I noticed from the different communications from the other agencies that are involved that there are some loose ends to pick up, and I assume that you're planning to do that on
Yeah,
the...
you saw the water department referral and the various...
The drainage.
Those are things that'll, we submitted drainage calculations to the planning board last week as well.
And the size of the water pipe going in. There's quite a few of them.
We'll address whatever the need is.
We're going to have to test, one of the things that this is going to do is this building currently does not have a sprinkler system. When we make this a significant upgrade to the property, we're going to be confirming what the water is coming in off the street, updating as necessary to not only accommodate the tenants, but also accommodate the fire suppression system that will be needed. So everything's now going to be updated with the fire department, so there'll be call stations. If there was a fire in one unit, they know the address is the brewery right here. It's going to make for a safer, nicer building.
How old is the original building that you're building on top of?
We're actually, the concept of the build, we're going to build it in a somewhat similar manner as we're building a new construction project we're doing on Main and 9 now, where we're going to be using a combination of steel and wood frame construction. So we will be reinforcing. So if you see these white columns here, this will be a steel post that comes down that's inside the new facade. And then there's going to be steel that runs all the way to the back. And they'll span, and in between those we'll be filling that in. So we're actually going to have it so it'll be clear span in the entire inside of that first floor. So all the tenants can stay at the Falmouth Track Club can be there, using the space, and it's very minimal disruption because we're really going right over the top.
And that's weathered shingles in between the girders.
Exactly. We're going to wrap everything with white composite, add some nice trim details, all nice windows with moldings, and then in this give it that Cape Cod look with all weathered shingles.
Nice.
And it's definitely, I drive back there often and I'm excited to see when this is done. I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's an improvement.
Anybody else? I had a couple comments also. You addressed the water system there, and I presume, what's the volume of the brewery? What kind of capacity are you talking about?
It's actually, for the style brewery that they're looking for, it's quite minimal. They've already had some meetings, and we've actually had a preliminary meeting with Rod Palmer on that as well. So again, the concept of what they're doing, they're producing just what they can sell out of that store. They're not producing wholesale.
it's a small system. I mean, if you go over to Cape Cod here, I think they have a 10 or 12 barrel system. I'm talking about a 1 barrel system essentially. I don't know the exact gallonage that they'd be using on a per brew basis. But I know that in the Sonoma site, I was looking at a 6 barrel system, and that was in the range of 7,000 gallons a day.
So it's a microbrewery.
Yeah, very much so.
And most of the sales will be on site, you're not delivering to stores?
Correct. All sales rate, that's the future plan as well. We have a very good understanding of what they're looking to do as we're looking at what we're now.
And obviously it has to be approved by the water department and the sewer department as
Correct.
well for
So
discharge.
everything we'll be doing, not just for them, but the upgrades we're doing to the building we're planning on now.
Well, the other issue I had is, that's a problem with drainage in that area, and obviously you have to keep drainage on site, both the roof drainage and the other drainage. But that area tends to flood a lot. Are you addressing that issue?
Well, this is the engineer, I think.
Yeah, part of the engineering report from the town engineering department called out a particular problem, drainage where the driveway meets
Right.
Main Street. That's the one area that we didn't include in our new drainage design. We were focusing in the back around the building. So we're going to update the drainage design to deal with that driveway area. So, and also add the roof downspouts into the drainage system as they recommended in their staff report. So in short, we're going to be addressing the items that they brought up in their staff report.
And the drainage will stay on site then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One thing to point out, because we're not expanding the footprint, we're not going to create any additional runoff that wouldn't already be there. So all the upgrades that this project will also bring is the improvement of the drainage of the property.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Just for the benefit of the board and the public, Kevin, you could just detail some of the treatments for the landscaping and the building, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, can I ask you a question? Your colors don't...
Put it away. Let's give it a look.
We have an immediate building landscape detail. You'll see that we've added benches in this area here, they've added raised planters in this area here and here, as well as bluestone pavers here in these 2 benches. This area will all be landscaped, which if you've been to the site, it's a very substantial that currently exists. And that's all done in the existing space between the buildings and the parking area. I think there was a comment from the planning board that they'd like to see some additional plantings located further up along the street, further up along the driveway area, which we're certainly amenable to do. Understanding that there's only so much space that is actually within our purview, but I think we're certainly amenable to doing some additional landscaping along the entranceway.
Just one more. Getting back to what John was saying about getting vehicles in, I'm looking at that corner. It's a real pinch point right there with the last parking space where it says X 2.0. You have a parking space that kind of backs out into the driveway.
This one right here?
Yes. Yeah. And that's kind of tight. Is there any way you could shove some of this parking down?
I think that, so I believe we're talking, I think it looks as though it would be,
And you have the edge of pavement, and then you have gravel, and then you've got the 5 spaces.
well, this is the area that I think had been intended to be landscaped. I think, yes, the answer is yes. Yes.
Okay.
Good answer.
I certainly think we can bring at least that spot down to this location here. And, perhaps that's even a good spot for the handicap, additional handicap spot that camera is.
Wait a minute. I'm thinking of going west as opposed to east.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, what we can do is take this row
Yeah,
and push it this way.
right, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Yeah,
The answer to that is yes, too.
okay.
At this time, we entertain comments from the public. Are there any comments? Please.
My name is Susan O'Loughlin. I'm the owner of 633 Main Street on the west side of this development. And over the course of the last 50 years, my family has owned this property. And the right-of-way has morphed into an additional 8 feet. And so on the west side of the property where Mr. Bogosian has these 5 parking places, literally leaves us with about 3 feet from my parking space to the proposed parking spaces. So there's not just me that's involved. I have 4 other neighbors who are above there. We are all considered Main Street. And so I have pictures if you would like to see. I'm not familiar, if you're familiar with the entire area, but
Well,
are you familiar with the area?
you may want to ask to return to the site plan.
Yeah, can you put the
slide,
site plan
please,
back up?
so we can
See what we're-
understand the lady's comments. There you go.
No, I'm not good with it.
So you can see where I have a handicap ramp here, and he's proposing parking places coming out, and we're already into that zone. So I'm not sure if those are going to be viable for garbage trucks go down there, fire trucks need to go down there. So it needs to be addressed, how we as the neighbors are going to continue using this right-of-way that over the course of time, I submitted a 1964 land court decision that we were allowed to use that right-of-way. And it has, yes, gone onto your property over the course of time, but previous owners have never, they can't say no. We have to have access to our properties.
Have you seen that?
We're familiar with the land court decision in that area from previous plan reviews. The board's role tonight is to simply listen, take in the public testimony. You're not going to make a decision tonight, and we'll be able to look into this for you, but this has occurred in the past, yes. So for your information and for the public comments, just take it in tonight, okay?
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Mr. Clower, you have any final comments? Do you have any final comments?
Sorry. I just want to point out that the parking spaces which are here are existing, is not being created from whole cloth. We are aware of the existence of a right-of-way, and we are aware of the decision. I don't believe that the spaces as shown interfere with the use of that right-of-way.
I would also be happy to meet with any of the neighbors and we can discuss. I want to make sure, owning other properties in the neighborhood, we want to work together to make sure everybody's business can thrive and people have access, even if it's, finding a plan that's going to make it work for everybody. So I welcome a meeting if, people on the planning board or neighbors want to meet on site.
Okay. Any other comments?
Okay, so we'll see
We
you
have a
again
meeting.
in about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks, we'll
Okay, so we will revise the landscaping plan to reflect that, and we'll revise the parking as well.
Well, I'll meet with the design team to go over the board's comments and the public comments, and we look at the revisions. We'll take a look at the engineer's report. Hopefully, we can get back with you with a revised plan for your consideration in about 2 weeks, and perhaps a decision at that time.
And what's the date on that one?
2 weeks.
28th.
After Thanksgiving.
28th.
I would like to see, after you meet with the neighbors, I'd be interested to see, because clearly a 3-foot right-of-way is not going to be doable for access to the back. So I would like to
Sure, we
see
can- and we
something
can-
when you come back.
We can show the exact distances as well.
And I think it's a great idea that you're going to meet with your neighbors, because we always like to see you're doing that, so we don't have to get involved.
Well, it was, I know the neighbor, her grandson is very good friends with my son, so we can figure this out and put this all together, hopefully.
Great.
Mr. Bogosian, I applaud your effort to work with the neighbors. Thank you. So we'll see you in 2 weeks, November 28th. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay.
Is that the first you heard of? You good.
What's after this?
Yeah, really.
Okay,
Be
this is
prepared.
one, okay, great. The next is Renee Warner, trustee, site plan review to add accessory apartment with an existing detached barn structure at 18 Woodruff Lane, BSS Design. Brian, I have a question. Are we always going to be doing a site plan review, even though that the special permit is granted by the ZBA?
No different than you just saw previously with the development for Mr. Bogosian.
Okay, so this is just plain old,
Plain old plan
Site
review,
plan.
site plan review with the design review element.
okay.
Right.
I just wanted to ask.
That you would forward on to the Board of Appeals for the decision in regards to special permit.
Thank you for that. For the applicant, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I'm Bob Ament. I'm a Falmouth attorney. I represent the applicant, Randy Warner, who's a trustee of a family trust. And the Warners have owned the property in question on Woodruff Lane, which is off of Quistit Avenue, for many years. In 1992, a special permit was obtained to remove an old barn and construct a larger building. Let's see if I have this barn, which was built over the next few years, so it was built by 1996. It measures 40 by 40, 1,600 square feet on the upper level, and a workshop, boat storage, and garage area below, another 1,600 square feet. So it's actually a very good-sized structure. There's a house here. It's not a very large house, but it does have 6 or 7 bedrooms in it. And the total property area is, I believe, about 1.4 acres. When the accessory structure was approved in the 90s, it was not allowed to be used for habitation. There couldn't be any sleeping in it. And what's changed is that the accessory apartment bylaw adopted by town meeting in April of this year coming to a close now allows an accessory apartment to be in a detached structure. So the proposal is not to change the dimensions, location, exterior of the existing now more than 20-year-old accessory structure, the barn, not to change any of that, but to create on the upper level within that 1,600 square foot space, which already does have an allowed full bathroom, to create a 600 square foot apartment. In the past, the Warners have, in the off-season, had a caretaker in their house. This small apartment would allow an owner of the property, and the property is for sale, but they would allow the use of this large structure for a caretaker or for family or for rental, simply to provide a fairly reasonable cost dwelling unit in the Woods Hole area, all of which is consistent with the purposes of the new accessory apartment bylaw to create more housing opportunities. So this doesn't involve any new construction, exterior, just interior changes. So if I can do this, there we go. That's not much to show in the lower level of the workshop. But this is the existing upper level with you can see the bath. There is a storage area which would become part of the apartment, and stairs to the lower level to the garage, barn, storage, workshop area. This is a drawing showing the proposed apartment. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So this is the 600 square feet of apartment with the bathroom here, bedroom, smaller bedroom here, in the middle living area, kitchen, just a small dwelling unit. This is the lower level access inside of the building. It's actually an extremely attractive structure. Mrs. Warner is a designer, her husband is an architect, and it fits awfully nicely. But that's a parking area outside the entrance to the barn. This is a view actually inside the existing first level, so that'll all stay the same. This is one side of the structure. And a couple of views of the street showing that there's adequate visibility in each direction in the driveway entrance. It's quite a private location. The house, actually, they call it Hidden House. It's not visible from the street. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but it seems like for a site plan review issue, there aren't any site changes being proposed.
Yes, Paul?
Mr. Alman, can you put the first floor dwelling unit up, please?
Existing condition?
18 Woodruff. Put first floor dwelling unit.
Okay. The proposed, is that what you
No,
want?
the next one.
That one.
The main
The
house.
first floor of the
These
main
aren't
building.
changes.
Oh, I don't have that. I did file that. You
Well,
have that. I didn't send it.
We've
over.
got it, we've
I
got
have
it.
it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, and it would appear, based on my observation here, that for the master bedroom, you gotta go out to the porch, come back into the dining room, to the kitchen to get to the breakfast room. Is that correct? I don't see any access except going outside from the master bedroom.
It's a separate building.
I haven't focused on the layout of the house itself. But that may be correct. It was a summer house used in the summer, and access from the rear is entirely possible. I think I noticed that myself, and I didn't ask the clients the question. It seemed okay. That could work. It's got a private.
Curiosity, I
Just
don't
an
believe that's in
observation.
front of us tonight.
I should point out that there are separate septic systems to the garage, that's the barn, and the house.
Yeah, I see.
The septic system was upgraded in about 2005. So there isn't any issue about that. The water service was updated when the barn was constructed in the 90s.
So I'm just trying to get this in my head here. I'm looking at this floor plan here, and it says recreation space for owner, and the apartment is separate from that?
Right,
That
it's
bedroom space?
possible to entirely seal it off, except the entrance will be through that. Really think of it as if the accessory apartment were in the same house
Right.
as the main dwelling, and there was an open space that was, you walked through, whether it was a small entry or a large entry that you went through to get to the apartment.
Yeah, like you were cutting off part of your house?
Yes,
same
sure.
thing. Now, as far as egress, I just see a common entry and then stairs going up.
Right, there's the entry off of a deck at
Yeah.
the lower right corner. That's one entrance. There's also access from the lower level or egress down the stairs to the lower garage level. One could get out that way. It's likely that there could be a egress using this window from the bedroom as well, because at that level, you're near the ground. This is a nice photo of
Okay.
of another.
Okay.
So that window on the left, or rather the right,
Yeah.
would be turned into an egress.
An egress. Okay, okay, thank you. And I know that's a building commissioner.
Building code, right, it's,
But,
it's another curiosity because we're interested, but
But the
it's
reason I
that's
ask
a
is
building code
if
issue.
the outside is being changed, we want to know
Right.
if there was going to be a covered exit or something else. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anyone from the public have any questions on this? Would you like to come up?
I don't have anything on the computer. Pictures are in there. I'll do a quiz next week. Good evening. I'm Marky Wheeler-Clues, and I'm a neighbor of the Warners. I have a residence at 303 Quistit Avenue, but more importantly, I own the 32 acres that's behind the Warners garage. I realize that your job is mostly site and the architectural designs, but I feel that there's never a simple context of a building. A building reflects its neighborhood and its people. This letter is to document issues in regard to the application of Randy Warner for the special permit, with the understanding that Falmouth has modified its zoning bylaws in an attempt to increase the number of rental small units for those that may want to age in place, and also to have more choices for young couples and young families. It's worth summarizing the history of this accessory building. In 1992, the Warners received a special permit to remove a small, single, two-stall garage that was considered non-conforming due to its setback. The original structure was 16 by 26 feet. The new building approved was a two-story barn, 40 by 40 and 25 feet tall. The plan submitted indicated there'd be no plumbing other than a hose bib. A single-story, 460-foot square building was replaced with a two-story, 1,600-square-foot building that had a garage workshop in the ground and a large restroom in the second. In essence, the new barn footprint was 20% smaller than the main house and almost 4 times the size of the original garage. In 1996, the Warners, quote, stated a desire to address issues with their neighbors, Appeal 1096. They stated that teenagers wanted to camp out in the barn, prompting an installation of a bathroom on the upper level. They assumed that the building commissioner's approval and certificate of occupancy would give them permission to put in the bathroom. The issue cited was the use of the building to house overnight members of the Commodore baseball team, which resulted in increased traffic on a very small one-lane driveway, would explain, noise and other disturbances. The decision of the board, quote, found that what was occurring in the accessory structure does not exceed the scope of what was granted or intended by the board, unquote. The board in its deliberation was disturbed to find that a full bathroom was installed. In addition, a letter dated March 11th sent to the Warner's lawyer, Mr. Ullman. from the building commissioner, Mr. Gore, confirmed the accessory structure does not constitute a second dwelling that shall be used for habitation and used for the recreation purposes only. While this review may seem lengthy, it's important to understand the contentious history and misuse of this building and disregard for the property lines. A full bathroom installed based on an assumption and overnight guests used it repeatedly, which negatively impacted on the neighbors. There has been additional boundary issues. When my parents owned the land behind the Warners, a small shed was placed on the Wheeler property. That's my parents' name. The shed was removed when my father contracted her. When I mentioned this boundary issue this past summer, she denied such a shed. Looking at the 2007 tax assessor map, it clearly shows a small shed on the boundary line. In 2014, I spoke with a local contractor who was using the lower level of the garage. He had stored much of his belongings and trash on my land. He quickly removed it as he was unaware of the property line. The responsibility of a landlord is to clearly define property lines for their tenants. The Warners continue to deposit leaves and organic matter on my property. In 2016, I decided to have an official survey done of this property line and had it staked. The stakes were placed well within my property as I contemplated installing a fence. As of this past summer, most of the stakes have been removed without my permission. This background information is pertinent to the Warners' current application before the board. The Warners have repeatedly disrespected boundary lines and decisions from the planning board. The new accessory apartment bylaws are very clear as a yearly monitoring to prevent the misuse of these new smaller dwellings. Considering the past history of misuse of the building, I am not confident the letter of the law will be upheld. The new bylaws clearly state that the accessory apartment or principal dwelling be occupied for 7 months by the owner. The Warners have not lived in the principal dwelling for some time. The property is mostly rented and listed in VBRO for a number of years. The Warners are currently building a new home in Western Massachusetts and plan to leave New York City. This information was supplied to me by Mr. Warner back in July. My property line is approximately 12 feet from the structure. While this land is undeveloped now, the proximity of this very large structure will certainly impact the value of my land. If an apartment is added with parking, this will only lessen the value of my adjoining land. There is important environmental issues to concern. While the property is not in the Coastal Pond Overlay District, it is, according to the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program, part of the Quistit sub-watershed. Outer Quistit Harbor is considered a high-quality area. These areas are designated as high-quality areas which shall be provided the highest level of protection. 16 Woodruff Lane is within approximately 850 feet of Quistit Outer Harbor and 700 feet of the coastal pond. Septic is certainly an issue. Using the new zoning bylaws recommendation as a reference point, there should only be 5.7 bedrooms on the property that size without connection to a municipal sewer system or an on-site septic system with an enhanced nitrogen removal system. The main house already has 6 bedrooms. The addition of 1 to 2 bedrooms will add a total of 7 to 8 bedrooms on a lot that is only 1.024 acres, not 1.4. The town of Falmouth is actively working to maintain a clean water system, and this should also include careful consideration of dwelling density. To summarize, a special permit should not be granted to Randy Warner, trustee of Rose Garden Realty Company, for the following reason. 1, blatant disregard for her neighbor's property lines. 2, increased traffic on a small one-lane driveway that bisects adjacent property. 3, disregard previous planning board decisions for example, installing a full bathroom and using the barn for habitation. Also, the accessory structure is in violation of the maximum building height. The Zoning Board of Appeals did not have the authority to approve the height which would require a variance, which the Warners never requested. The septic system is not adequate for a total of 7 to 8 bedrooms. History of poor management of their tenants, and the owners have not lived in the principal dwelling for 7 months. Historically, the dwelling is a summer residence and has been used as rental property. The Warners have rarely been residents for the last few years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Keep in mind, we're doing a site plan review tonight, okay? You're going to have to go to the ZBA for the actual hearing. I'll let you continue, but we're
Yes.
really trying to focus on the site plan.
I will. I just have 3, this is a copy of my letter to the ZBA.
My name is Louise McCrower. Legal name is Judith McCrower, that's why that's on there. And I wish we had a plan of all of Woodruff Lane. So Mr. Emmett had the picture from Quistit Avenue. Woodruff Lane goes all the way up we own two properties, 267 Quistit Avenue, which is totally on the right side of Woodruff Lane. And then we own 11 Woodruff Lane, which the house is on one side and the garage is on the other. So anybody going to the Warner's property goes up our lane, for which we are responsible. It's a private way. As you said, your purview is limited and it may not apply to our concerns. One of our concerns is size. We do applaud the new bylaw. It's a good law. It looks to me as if this planned accessory apartment is greater than 800 square feet, which I think the
It
bylaw...
says it's 600 right on the plan,
But that whole floor is 1,600.
but it's not included. We had that, we covered that earlier. That's a demising wall and it's restricted to 600 square feet. That same question was brought up in future past testimony saying the recreation area is part of the main dwelling, as is the garage.
All right, well then, I'm assuming you don't want to hear, I have concerns about traffic, which is ZBA, and I have concerns about compliance, as Marky suggested. These have not been easy neighbors, and they say one thing, and then Eladio Gore or someone else says that's not what we meant. The planning board says one thing, and they do another. And so I think as a neighbor and a butter, we feel somewhat powerless in light of their disregard for your issuances.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Lumet?
Thanks. I'd like to correct a couple of statements. First, the area of the lot is the larger figure mentioned because it's both registered and unregistered land. The smaller figure is just the unregistered land. It doesn't include the registered land, but the total is identified on the plan. Right up, it says actually 1.29 plus or minus acres in the top left corner, because as you can see, at the bottom, there's an additional almost a quarter of an acre. I'll give a copy of a letter to you from the building commissioner. It's dated March of 1996. He confirms that the accessory structure, which was permitted by special permit and includes a bathroom, is deemed in compliance with the special permit. He lists conditions that the structure not be used for a second dwelling, not be used for habitation, it's for recreational purposes. All of that, as I said, is what the limitations of the original special permit were. A subsequent special permit clarified the height, because the height would have exceeded 25 feet with a gazebo. That was on top of it. That was removed. The building was constructed according to the special permit, 25 feet tall. A variance was not required at the time, and the special permit expressly allowed the building as constructed and as it exists today. Here's a copy of the building commissioner's letter. There is no doubt that there's been disagreement between the Warners and neighbors in the past. Most of the testimony you've heard is really irrelevant to the proposal before you. The fact is the structure exists. The zoning bylaw has been changed to encourage the proposed use, and there's going to be a new owner. Now, the new owner will have to comply with the bylaw. Your special permit wouldn't, or your site plan review and the Board of Appeals special permit is going to be subject to the conditions of the bylaw. Yes, there will have to be yearly monitoring. And yes, the owner will have to meet the 7-month occupancy requirements, though those are a little vague in the bylaw, but hopefully the change in ownership will resolve some of the issues that had existed. But this is a good use for this particular structure. It is likely that residency of the building can have less impacts, less adverse impacts than use of the building solely for recreation. And I don't think that any of the testimony that's been granted or the history that's been given really suggests a reason to deny this application. It actually suggests that with this use of the property can be beneficial. Now, it is true that the structure is 12 feet from the property line. The zoning bylaw only requires a setback of 10 feet. An owner of adjacent property has no expectation that there won't be a structure or development within 10 feet of a property line. Everything that's there today has been approved by the town more than 20 years ago. Thank you.
Anybody? Yes?
So I guess one of my questions is, how long has, well, series of questions. How long has the property been on the market?
I think it's only been listed for a few months,
So
maybe less.
So hypothetically, in order to permit this, there has to be a 7-month year-round resident living in the main structure.
Well, the bylaw says that there has to be, one of the units has to be occupied for 7 months. It doesn't say year-round resident at all.
Right.
And it also isn't clear that during those 7 months, one has to be physically present all of that time at the house. So whatever it does mean, I didn't write it, and it hasn't been interpreted a lot because it's new, whatever it means, the owner of the property will need to comply with the requirements.
This is also not subject to our meeting. This is a zoning board of appeals decision on that rule. We are looking at the site plan. All the other permitting requirements that are in the bylaw all fall to the zoning board of appeals. They're the ones that issue the special permit. We are not the special permit granting authority on this, only the site plan.
I understand that, but
So those rules and everything take place at another meeting, is what I'm saying. It's the truth.
it was a planning board.
I'm not sure, it might have been a
Accessory
ZBA. They kept
apartment.
saying planning board, but I thought this permit was issued by the ZBA originally, wasn't it?
That's correct.
They were saying
they were all
planning
Board of
board,
Appeals.
but I knew it was ZBA. Everyone misses the two up.
So there were complaints that led to an appeal of a building commissioner's decision, and there were a total of 4 Board of Appeals decisions in the 90s regarding this property, 1 on an appeal, 3 special permit decisions. There have been no complaints that I'm aware of. There certainly may have been, but I'm not aware of them. Certainly not leading to any proceedings for more than 20 years with regard to this property. In trying to find a new owner, where one has such a large accessory structure, it seems to me perfectly reasonable to try to be able to permit uses which are being encouraged by the town in order to be able to show a prospective buyer what they can do with the property. I can't guarantee that the special permit rights will in fact be exercised, but that's not the point. The point is this a use of the property that can be allowed, and based on the criteria by which special permits are issued, whether it should be granted. As town meeting seems to suggest, under appropriate cases, it should be.
Okay, so we're working on the site plan review.
Well, I just want to clarify something. It was It was my understanding the planning board presented the accessory apartment bylaw that was passed by town meeting last April.
That's correct.
So this is a planning board bylaw, it's not a ZBA bylaw.
Right, but in our bylaw, we said that if there is the detached
Right,
structure,
then it has to go
that
for site
special,
plan, special permit.
that special permit is granted
Right.
by the ZBA, not us.
Right.
That all we do is
Right,
the
and-
site plan.
And all I was referring to was, in the planning board bylaw, it stated that the main dwelling, or one of the dwellings, would be occupied for 7 months.
Mhm.
All right.
That's part of the special permit hearing, and this is a site plan hearing. This is not the special permit hearing. We are not the special permit granting authority on this issue. I let the neighbors go, and I think that was probably a mistake because we went off in the wrong direction. We should have been focusing on the site plan, and generally when you go off in the wrong direction, you get lost. So that's what's happened. But we're supposed to be working at the site plan, the structure, the drainage, and then the ZBA has to, we're gonna make these folks do this twice. Now they have to go and do it at the ZBA and have the same conversation again. That's the bylaw.
Okay.
It's new, you have to understand. This is new for all of us.
Well, perhaps we can have a discussion offline with
Yeah.
the board members so you fully understand where the jurisdictions lie, what your responsibilities are, okay? Mr. Chairman? So we can see this back in about, hopefully, 2 weeks,
Okay.
which is the 28th, I'm told. I'm sorry, I thought we were done.
Is it?
It's up to the chairman. There's one more commenter, I'm sorry.
Do you have something to,
I do.
go ahead, come up and identify yourself.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Lynch, I'm an attorney at Nixon Peabody, 100 Summer Street in Boston, exclusive counsel. To the debate that you're having and the jurisdiction of the board, the apartment bylaw statute says that prior to an issue of a building permit for an accessory apartment, a site plan review, design review pursuant to Article 39 of the zoning bylaw shall be conducted by the planning board, taking into account the design standards, requirements, and purposes of the bylaw. To your point, you have a much broader jurisdiction, the way I read this, than what you're suggesting. And so I think her testimony is relevant and appropriate. If that's not the case, then I'm wrong, but I do think your jurisdiction is a lot broader than you're suggesting.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
That's interesting. If it's true that our jurisdiction is broader and we might consider the purposes of the law, it would appear that the use that will be put to it by this owner right now, with no other owner in sight at this time, we ought to take that into consideration, because it was not the purpose of the accessory bylaw to create rental properties for VRBO use. That was not what was envisioned by this. What was envisioned, as I understand it, you can correct me when I'm wrong, was there would be an owner-occupied part, and we would make it possible for there to be an accessory apartment for several different types of uses. But it wasn't.
I want to hold, I know, someone's expressed an opinion. I know we weren't trying to have a double hearing and handle the same things twice. We were trying to streamline this process and not make the applicants come to 2 different meetings and go over the same thing. So I was just trying to streamline the process, and that was our interpretation of it, that we were doing a site plan review. As far as all these questions, they're going to deal with them at the ZBA again, and that's where, I believe that's the appropriate spot for them, not here. If you wanted to have a double hearing, that's not, I don't think that was our intent.
I'm glad that you suggested we might have a further conversation.
Right, the commenters were presented information and their opinions to the board.
Right.
If the board has questions, the only opinion that matters is Attorney Duffy's. Period. So if there is confusion amongst the board members as to where you stand in your authorities, we'll make sure Mr. Duffy has the right advice for you based on the comments received and his interpretation of the law for your guidance. Okay. That's how we work it.
Okay.
Excellent, because it is early on in the
Correct.
This is number 2,
administration
right?
of this, right.
3?
So best to explore its edges.
Yep.
Sure. So if there are no further public comments, Mr. Chairman.
Everyone? Mr. Ahmet, one?
I just want to add what I think you all know and is obvious, and that is that you don't grant special permits based on who an owner is at a particular time, because that can change at any time. And special permits are granted subject to conditions, and they apply even if there's a change of ownership. If there were no building on this site at this time, and there was a vacant lot and it was for sale, somebody could come to the board asking for permission to build a main house and an accessory structure, saying this creates value, it's a use that's encouraged by the town, this is what I want to be able to build for somebody. I don't know who that's going to be. And we know that the Warners are trying to sell the property. We've said so. It's knowledge in the community. This is not going to be for them. This is going to be to help them to sell the property. They're dealing with an accessory structure that between the two floors is 3,200 square feet, entirely legally existing. So I thought I should make that comment.
John, you have something?
Yes, regarding site plan review, it appears to me that the site is adequate in size, the structures are adequate in size, the parking is adequate, the building has its own septic system, presuming that it is a
Board of Health issue.
properly functioning system, and that's my opinion.
I concur. On the site plan review, how are you?
I don't have a problem with the site plan.
Well, we'll bring this all back to you in 2 weeks, and you can have a full discussion based on the proceedings.
Okay,
Very good. That's the 28th.
no decision, yeah?
No decision. That's fine.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is Falmouth Service Center site plan review to develop the property at 141 Sandwich Road to relocate the thrift shop facilities into a new 6,480 square foot building. For notices, please.
Mr. Chairman, the notice of the public hearing was published on October 27, 2017, and 9 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Thank you. So I have to give notice as well. I have filed a notice with the town clerk that I serve as a volunteer to the Falmouth Service Center, and that I have no financial interest in this whatsoever, and I've got a letter from the town attorney authorizing me to proceed sitting at this seat tonight. The requirement is for me to, I didn't realize, it's a good thing I did, it has to be filed with the town clerk prior to the meeting, and I did that yesterday. So I have a letter from the town attorney, and it's been filed with the town clerk, and I have no conflict.
Can I add that?
Yes.
I'm also an occasional volunteer for the Service Center, particularly at Thanksgiving, but I did not go through that rigmarole. I didn't think it was necessary, as I do not have any financial interest, and I just spent some time giving out turkeys.
I hope they're not the Falmouth turkeys.
Well, I was helping them, consulting on real estate, so I thought it was appropriate for me to
Correct.
put the proper notice. And I find the more I volunteer and the more I serve on boards, the more conflicts come up. So I think I'm just going to get a habit of sending the agenda to the town attorney and screen him for conflicts almost every night. But we're all set on this one. For the applicant.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, again, I'm Bob Ament, Falmouth attorney. It's my pleasure to represent the Falmouth Service Center in this matter. In the audience tonight is the executive director, Brenda Swain, and the president of the Falmouth Service Center, friend and colleague Jeff Oppenheim, vice president of the Service Center, Kathy Kliegler. Brian Keck, next to Brenda, is the chairman of the building committee for this project. There are other people interested in this project here. The property is owned by a company owned by Robert Burke. Burke is here. And the engineer for the project is Mike Borselli. The property is on Sandwich Road, on the east side of Sandwich Road, roughly 2/3 of the way from Route 28 up to Brick Hill Road. And it's a split zoned lot. This is the zoning line. This portion of the property is business. This portion is agricultural. There's a vacant lot to the south, residential property to the north. Behind is property owned by the town of Falmouth, used for drainage. There's a drainage easement running along here. And the property has an interesting history. I think that we've included in the package these photos. This one says that it's current. This is the one I love. This is a 1975 photo. Those are the lot lines in yellow, as you can see. The entire lot was paved and lined for parking for Zach's nightclub across the street. And this building down in the southwest corner was a sub shack. I should buy sandwiches, right? So that's a great photo to have when you have to prove to the Conservation Commission how much impervious coverage there was before 1979. And so we've submitted it to the Conservation Commission. There are some wetlands in the back created primarily by the drainage off the road in the town. Now they're protected wetlands. So I wanted you to see that picture in particular. Then I believe this picture dates from 2007. By then, the property had been purchased in the mid-90s by David Drew, who built various structures for nursery purposes. This was a greenhouse structure, but in the next picture, 2017, you can see that this is now a substantial building that was permitted in, I think it was 2006 completed, and it was permitted for retail use. It also has 2 permitted apartments on the second floor. Some of the nursery structures have been removed in this picture. We just have foundations. A lot of the pavement dating from before 1975 still exists. You can see parking along the line up here. We've got other photos, I think, showing parking in here as well as in front of the buildings. So this site has been heavily developed over the years, and those are the current conditions. I think we've loaded some photos, maybe not in here. There we go. So this is sort of the middle of the property. Looking towards the front, you can see where the apartments are in that building in the front. This is pavement right up the street, actually this is a marker, a survey tag, I believe. Anyway, this is the town, I got this right, Mike? We know that the pavement actually extends into the town layout. That pole is a couple of feet into the street layout. So this is all pavement that exists back to before 1975. This site is, although the retail building is in good shape, the apartments are occupied, a lot of the site is looking pretty derelict. And it's got a great future. The Falmouth Service Center proposes to construct or Bob Burke will construct for the Service Center this 6,480 square foot building. We've submitted the architectural plans that you have. I don't have them to show you on the screen. A copy if you need it, but they've been filed with you. A building that would be similar to the Jack and the Beanstalk facility that's near the high school. All of the structures except for this 1,800 square foot retail building with apartments above, everything will be removed, and the whole site will be renovated. In the rear of the property, there'll be reduction in pavement that's within Conservation Commission jurisdiction, whereas the parking today, the pavement and the parking goes out into the street layout. Here's that curbing we were there will now be landscaping, and the landscaping will go out to the existing sidewalk. Instead of an existing curb cut more than 40 feet wide in this area, there'd be 2 separate curb cuts. From the point of view of the public's perception of the property, the view of the property, it will be a substantial improvement. Now, what the service center is going to do in this building is move their thrift shop, which presently is in a much smaller facility at Emerald House, owned by the town, a historic house on Davisville Road. That operation will move here. In addition to having processing the receipt of donations and the processing of them, they'll have a sales area. Some of the donations, after being processed, cleaned, will be taken to the service center's facility on Gifford Street, where they will be given to people who need clothing. And what's sold on this site will generate revenue for the service center, which probably most of you are aware of, serves such an important purpose in town. As an indication of the support for this project, we've submitted a petition signed by almost 300 people in favor, as well as now about 15 letters, including letters of support for this project from our state senator, our state representative, the Chamber of Commerce, various nonprofits, and others. This is a very important project, and it's an ideal location. We've submitted a traffic analysis professionally prepared, just so that we have a complete file for your review. No traffic problems, it's good visibility, it's relatively low traffic generator. We are going to, we do show some parking in the front yard that can be allowed by a special permit by the planning board. But we haven't applied to the planning board for a special permit because the existing conditions are non-conforming, and the Zoning Board of Appeals has the authority to grant a special permit to change, and in this case improve, the non-conforming conditions. We need a special permit from the Board of Appeals in any case because the philanthropic use that's proposed is going to be partially within the agricultural district, and that's allowed by special permit issued by the Board of Appeals. Since we're going to the Board of Appeals for that special permit, it made sense to ask them for the special permit that would include these nonconformances, that is, some parking in the front yard, even though it's much more landscaping and setback than exists already. And the lot coverage is already nonconforming. It will increase from about 61% to about 65% of the lot, but presently the situation is not well controlled. There's runoff onto the street. All of that will be addressed, and the plan will meet current standards. And the referral that's been received from the engineering department is indicative of the success of this plan because they have few concerns, and I think we've addressed any that they have. You do have a staff report. Might be some questions related to it. Happy to answer questions about this.
Charlotte, are you all set?
I'm all set.
John?
I have a couple of questions. On the site plan for the existing structure, you don't show any septic or leaching area. I know it must have it. I don't see it on the plan.
Michael speak.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it is on the plan, it's on this plan and it's on the existing, it's hard to see, there's a lot of line on this plan. But the septic tank is here, and the leaching field is here. If I can get you to the existing conditions plan, it's a little faded, you can't see it on the existing condition. It's labeled here, it's the approximate location of the existing septic system. But it's clearer on this proposed plan. So this building
Here already.
and the other uses are served by this septic system. And this building, which will remain, will continue to be served by this system. And a new system, conforming to Title V and the Town of Falmouth health requirements, will serve the new building.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is, on the notes, it shows that the existing structure and the proposed structure total 10,013 square feet. Does that mean this gets referred to the Cape Cod Commission?
It has to be an additional 10,000.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions?
My understanding is it would not be, but I can find out for you.
It's not a development of regional impact?
Correct, that's my understanding.
Okay.
But
When we did CVS, it was 19,999. They were adding, so they were adding. Yes, ma'am.
Tell me again what the existing structure consists of and who uses, I know there are apartments upstairs.
Yes.
And what is that structure used for now?
Well, it's presently still has within it the retail shelving and, in fact, some of the retail materials that were for sale. Presently vacant, and it's for rent.
Oh, okay, so there won't be, well, whatever goes in there will go in there, hopefully will be compatible, and they can make lots of donations to the service center.
Well, I'm sure that'll be the case. The lease between the service center and the owner has certain protections in that regard regarding the tenancy.
Okay. And the residents are presently, the 2 apartments are occupied
Yes.
and will remain in the tenancy. Okay.
Yes?
Good evening, Brenda Swain from Falmouth Service Center. I just wanted to make a couple comments. First of all, I wanted to thank Jim Fox and Bob Ament, who both have volunteered their time on behalf of the Service Center, and we really appreciate that. I appreciate your listening to this because it's incredibly important for the Service Center's future to make sure that 20 and 30 years from now, we're still there, able to provide the services that we have been providing since 1983. And it's getting harder and harder to write grants. There are more and more nonprofits who need support and help. And one of the ways that we support the Service Center's work is through the income that's generated through our very successful thrift shop. But there's only 750 square feet of selling space there. The volunteers do an amazing job generating close to $100,000 a year. But we know from several other programs that actually visit us to get started and have moved 3 times that they're generating 4 to 5 times what we make. So we know that we can raise more money through this, recycle some of the materials that are currently going to the landfill, sell them, be able to purchase more food, pay people's rent, do things that will really further the interest of the town and our residents. So we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Bob?
The Service Center is just going to occupy the new building, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I see there's only one access to that building. Is there a dedicated area for donations?
Well, there are actually a number of accesses. There's doors in the front. There's a door on the side. There's a garage door with a door past the door next to it. This expanded area which isn't labeled for parking. Come in, leave it, or for the trucks that would move materials, especially between the Gifford Street site and this. And then there's also an emergency access from the building on this side.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, just one comment. This is similar to the building that's being constructed for the Habitat Restore, is that correct?
I can't answer the question because I'm not familiar with the project, but Bob Burke might be able to. I think
Bob,
this
could you
building is a
address
lot
that?
smaller.
On a small scale.
Please step up and identify yourself.
Good evening, I'm Robert Burke, the owner of the property, and it is similar to the new Habitat store, but on a much smaller scale. That building's 9,800 square feet. This one's
That's very big.
6,800 square feet.
Thank you.
Well,
Is that anyone from the public? You'll have this prepared?
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Do you want to say something?
No, it's okay. Oh, it's okay.
I looked at her twice. I got her first.
Yeah, we just should have congratulated them. It's a really good-looking building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment to our board members.
Then it begins again.
Okay, we're going to continue, but for our board members, when I was sitting in the next room, every time somebody turned a page and hit the microphone, it was a terrible rumble, and you can't hear a damn thing when we do it, so we should all be careful when I was trying to figure out how it happens, and it's the folding of plans and hitting these mics. It really disrupts the...
Maybe we were trying to protect you from hearing anything.
Need smaller plans.
Yeah, better table.
Okay, now, moving on, planning board decision. The applicant, Gary Cannon, site plan review and construct an accessory apartment at 11 Santa Maria Lane. And I know many of you have commented. I know as soon as I went home, I realized we were in error and we should not have been even hearing this, that this should have been a four-bedroom house or whatever, and should not have come to the planning board. So I had called Brian, but I guess many of you also had called, and we had kind of made a mistake. We shouldn't have gone down that path. So we're rescinding our decision. We have to have a vote to rescind. I would like to move to rescind our vote of, was that October 2nd? Or whenever we did it. No, October 24th.
October 14th.
Oh, it's actually a motion already written out, sorry.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Planning board hereby votes to rescind its decision voted October 24th, 2017, the application of Gary Cannon for the construction of an accessory apartment at 11 Santa Maria Lane. It's the understanding of the board that the application is not necessary.
I'll second.
Got a question?
No, it's not a question. I think it'd be useful for anyone listening in to explain why it's not necessary.
Well, first, it really wasn't an accessory apartment at all. It was really just because there was no separate wall in between them. It was open to them. It was really a four-bedroom house. And I think we were bending over backwards to try to help them, and I realized when I got home that we shouldn't have gone there. I should have stopped it earlier. It was my fault. I was trying to be too accommodating, and I decided I couldn't live with it. I called Brian right away, and he said, well, we'll just take it back. So,
Thank you.
you know, we'll get better at these as we go along.
Rule 1, don't vote the same. Now,
Right.
repeat after me.
That is a great rule, and we actually thought about it and did it anyway.
Right.
So that is because we could have discussed it and solved the problem and not had to withdraw it. We could have dealt with it.
So we can vote on this motion tonight.
Now, if I wasn't here, can I still vote on it? I didn't vote the original, so I probably shouldn't vote.
You might get in big trouble for that.
I don't want to get in trouble. I'm a newbie.
So Brian, we're going to vote this tonight?
That's my recommendation to the board, because we clean up the record.
Yeah.
There's an outstanding vote floating around out there. It
Yeah.
hasn't been recorded or sent to the building commissioner.
We should do it right away.
The application is still technically open.
Right.
Unlike a special, even a special permit, you actually have 2 weeks to file your decision. We always file the next day.
Right.
But you actually have a 2 week to kind of think it over.
Right.
You can actually return. This is very similar, but it's not a permit. So yes, just to clean up the whole record, this vote would supersede your vote of the 24th.
Okay.
So your motion and a second, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? General correspondence, I did not see anything. And future agenda items, we don't have any future agenda items, do we?
We do. Yes, we do. And we delayed because Brian wasn't here, and so we waited for Brian so that we could have a discussion of 2 items. One for clarification for an edification of us and the public about spot zoning, and the other on pushing forward our work on Davis Straits and deciding what are the next best steps and looking at suggestions for that so we can start moving on it.
Okay, we can bring that up on the next meeting. You can read the drag out the spot zoning letter from the state saying what is and what isn't. We've got that.
Sure. In fact, it might be a good idea. You hear that thrown out at town meeting, almost every town meeting.
Right.
So it might be a good idea. We have a PowerPoint presentation on how to spot a spot zone. It might be useful to have that on TV, and those members of the board or members of
Yeah, I
the
think
public
that
who are
would-
interested in the topic can also have an opportunity.
I didn't bring out the letter on town meeting because I brought out the last 3 town meetings and I thought maybe we were just done with it. But obviously because of turnover, I was wrong. We need to bring that letter up every year because it seems to be everyone jumps on spot zoning
Well, and our 2 recommendations got licked
for lots of reasons.
for other reasons also, but for this, so good to review.
Yep.
I got another one.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I heard spot zoning, and you want to pick up what on Davis Straits? I'm sorry.
Multifamily
yes.
housing and an overlay
An
district.
overlay district.
Right,
I would much prefer to be doing that, believe me.
okay, good.
I suggest we have a discussion on the articles that did not pass at town meeting and what the implications are and what we do about it next time.
Okay. Does anyone want to discuss articles that didn't pass?
I think, yeah, I think it'd be interesting, especially in terms of the solar. I did hear after the fact that people thought that was spot zoning. So, you know, I think that's important to talk about.
I wonder how restricted it would be when it's worded that way, because the thought would be, if that wasn't successful way to do, to have more solar projects, maybe we want to look at the bylaw concerning agricultural uses, and would that be included in what Paul's saying?
I think we have another agenda item. Yes, I guess it could be, but Brian and I had a discussion at town meeting, and it was obvious we need to change. The simple solution is not to force light industrial C, but just make...
Expand agricultural.
Yeah, just so you don't get into, just add ground-mounted solar array to some other districts where we want it, and it becomes a moot point if we do it that way.
That makes
Well, we're not discussing it now, but we should bring it up next time.
Well, that's going to be in the agenda.
Yeah.
But that's
Correct.
part of it.
That was going to be my suggestion to the board, that you should have a discussion about solar arrays perhaps in certain zoning districts subject to certain conditions. No different than you have contractors' yards in agricultural zones subject to a special permit issued by this board subject to certain conditions. It might be the same for solar arrays. But we will be discussing that soon because the town warrant closes first week of
There's a
January.
previous warrant article in prior years that had this discussion. It has come up before.
Megan Hensley.
Yep. And maybe with some modifications, that might have been a good idea.
So given we have to have things come up twice to make a vote, we'd have to do that right away.
Okay, I will try to get that on your agenda.
In the near
Jim,
future.
Very near future, because if you want to present it at the April town meeting, the warrant closes probably first week, second week of January. There's often a special town meeting in April too, it might give you to February. So you don't have a lot of time to do this, is what I'm saying. So it may bump other things that we have coming down the road, no pun intended. The other thing, I think, if the board members are completed, I'd like to offer the suggestion that we also take a look at the accessory dwelling unit bylaw in general residence districts. Accessory apartments were only allowed for many years, since day one, in agricultural and residential zones. That's what we changed back in April. It's been pointed out that in general residence districts, you can have a single family, a two family, and a three family by right.
You can't have an accessory.
But not an accessory dwelling unit. So it's something to consider as maybe a quick fix for the April town meeting before the warrant closes in January. So we might put some language together for you very quickly to take a look at that. Otherwise, you're going to see it as a petitioner's article, because there are some circumstances out there that people find themselves in, apparently. So something to discuss on the PDQ a little bit on the accessory dwelling unit bylaw.
So that'll be a future agenda item as well.
We'll just, you and I can discuss it and put it in front of the board, because you only really have, in 2 weeks, and then you may have 2 or 3 meetings total before the close of the warrant. It's not a lot of time. No. Or we'll see you in February
second.
for the close of the special.
Okay, we'll have to work on that. I want to make sure we deal with it adequately, though.
Correct. It has to be
And
something.
I don't be rushing to meet a deadline and not have public discussion on issues.
Well, you always have a zoning article, you always have a public hearing.
Right.
Right. So it would be, as you know, last time it was amend section 23I and 33I. This would be amend section 35I, whatever it is.
Whatever.
Right. Do you want to include that bylaw in this district? It's actually a very simple technical switch.
Okay. Yes.
When I was speaking with Pat, we both remembered that we had voted to have a joint Board of Health Planning Board meeting, and that we all concurred we should do that, but it's never happened. And I would like to bring that up again so that we can have a joint meeting with the Board of Health, especially in regard to the accessory apartments.
Haven't you worked it out that they're not opposing us anymore? Has that problem gone away and that's why we're not having it, or do we have to have that meeting?
Well, first I'll go back and check the vote. I don't recall one, but at this time, in Board of Appeals, so the Board of Health is within its rights to interpret the state health code as it chooses. But I'll go back and review the record on that and whether or not such a meeting is appropriate at this time. Okay?
Does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that was our recollection.
Okay.
I remember talking about it. I don't remember a specific vote, but it could have been. I'm not saying one way or the other. I remember discussing it because it was a hot issue for a while.
Change of topic, but just wondering where it is and what your thoughts are on timing it. A project was initiated to rewrite the bylaws. We looked at a table of contents for them, and I wonder where that's gone, and should we be looking at that periodically, and when that period would be?
Yeah, we definitely should have an update that in the future, Brian.
You will be seeing that. I told us consultants to somewhat slow down because you were bumping into town meeting. So you will be seeing that more than likely, maybe the 28th.
It's a busy night.
It's a busy night, if not the first week of December.
Well, I think a good reason to bring it up is our institutional memory is abandoning us, so I wonder if we're, we don't want to lose our saved up agenda items.
I don't think we can replace them that quickly, but we'll.
You're being very PC.
That's true.
Yes, Brian?
There are certain projects that I will be on board for, and that is one.
Okay.
either as a contractor or in the background, so the board knows. Okay.
I make a
Those-
motion we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Quick.
So keep that in mind.
Talk to your sister.